Hey everybody, Josh here, and I screwed up the audio pretty good on this video, so I'm going to attempt to narrate this thing and hopefully make it not too painful to watch. So I'm just going to try to take you through the process of building this workbench. Here I'm just using up as much scrap material as I can, so I'm just breaking these panels down to get some smaller strips that will be used for the legs. These narrow strips here are going to be used for some cross members of those shelves. Here I'm breaking down one of the old shelves from the previous workbench, just using the little guide on the circular saw to cut some strips, and then I will cut them to the actual size on the table saw. These longer pieces are actually going to be the stretchers that are going to connect the two end panels. Using a new sheet of plywood here, I am cutting out the center of the end panels. This is going to go between each leg, and you'll see that assembled here in just a second. The legs are very simple. I'm just gluing and using some brad nails to hold them in place, and then I come back and add a few screws. Using the miter saw, I'm just cleaning up one end of each leg, and then I toss a stop block on so that I can make sure that they're all the same length. And then, wishing I had a router table, I'm using a little palm router with a round over bit to kind of knock off that sharp edge. And now I'm assembling the end panels of the workbench. I'm placing that centerpiece between each leg and trying to make sure everything's as square as I can get it. I'm just using screws here. You could add some wood glue, but I will have to move this workbench down the road. And then I just repeat the process for the second end panel. And now I'm really wishing I had a router table. This workbench is going to be used for making leather goods, and so I'm just trying to knock down any sharp corners just to hopefully prevent any scratches or scuffs. And now I'm going to cut all my cross members to the same length. My T-track wasn't quite long enough for my stop block to reach, so I just tacked in a stop block with some brad nails. Now I'm adding probably way too many pocket holes. I kind of changed my approach after I drilled all of these, so a lot of them are actually unnecessary. Originally I was going to secure each shelf top from the bottom. That's why I put pocket holes kind of throughout. But you'll see later in the video that I just ended up screwing in from the top down, just making sure to countersink everything. And then I'm adding them here to the end panels because I did use pocket holes when I attached the top. Here I'm breaking down the old workbench top. I'm just cutting it down to size to be used as one of the shelves, and then definitely had to add the round over to it and gave it a good sanding. Breaking down another sheet here for the second shelf. Same thing, I'm going to take the round over bit to it and sand away. If you are interested in handmade leather goods, you can definitely check out the Instagram at BriarwoodLeather. Working on the top now. This is a full 4x8 sheet. I cut some smaller strips or filler pieces so I could get a thicker workbench. I didn't want to glue two 4x8 sheets together, and so you'll see me adding in kind of pieces around the perimeter and then a couple in the center and lots of glue. Gave me a little more heft, but didn't cost quite as much. I'm not too careful lining up the edges because I end up taking a flush trim bit once this is all installed to clean up that front edge. Kind of did a combination of brad nails and screws here. Brad nails just kind of help me hold the stuff in place, and then I secure it down with those screws. And then one final sand on the end panels before I move everything down into the basement. So here I am clamping the stretchers for the bottom shelf to kind of keep the end panels in place. I just kind of work my way around. It's just me, so I'm kind of using clamps and screws as my extra hands. And then adding in a couple of the cross members for some additional support. I ended up cutting the shelves a little bit long, so I just trimmed them up quick in the basement. And then, like I said earlier, I didn't end up using the pocket holes going from the bottom up here. And I also noticed how much flex was in the center. Now, glue may have helped this keep it a little more rigid, but I do come back later and add a leg in the center. And then I just repeat the process for the next shelf. Then finally adding the stretchers for the top to be secured into place. You're going to see a lot more cross members here because I do use the pocket holes I drilled to secure the top down to the base. I went around and added screws to the pocket holes so that my life would be a little bit easier when I get this thing in place. Now that the glue dried, I come back and trim up the top. I think I lied, I didn't end up using a flush trim bit. I think I just cleaned everything up with the circular saw and hit it with a roundover bit and gave it a good sanding. And now this is where it would be a good idea to have a second person. This was not very light, and you can see me struggle here pretty good to try to get this thing into place. Then I just slide it onto the frame and make sure I have it centered, and then I screw it into place. And now I'm adding in that center leg. I just added some screws up at the top, made sure the shelf wasn't sagging in the center any, and then tossed a couple screws in there. You can see on the other side here I had to pull up the shelf just a little bit to make sure everything was spaced correctly. And adding the center leg really made the workbench a lot stronger. I ended up adding these little flip casters just to help me move this thing around because it's definitely got some weight to it. And that's a wrap. I did add a top coat to this. I just did that off camera. As you can see, I use this workbench for leather, and there's tons of storage. You could of course use this for anything you want to use it for, but it's just been really awesome to have a full 4x8 workbench. Sorry again for messing up the audio. Hopefully this wasn't too dull and boring. I'm no Morgan Freeman, I don't know. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to check out this video, and hopefully it helped anybody out there looking to make their own workbench.